Welcome to Flourish-Meant, the podcast on living life as you are meant to, so you can flourish. Welcome, everyone. Today I have with me a woman with an amazing story and a lot of wisdom to share. Ginny Dent Brant is a speaker and writer who grew up in Washington, D.C., where all the halls of power, they say, are located. She has served as a counselor, educator, wellness advocate, and adjunct professor. She's also been a trustee on the Baptist International Mission Board for 8 years, and she and her husband have participated in mission work in many foreign countries. She is here to share with us today about preventive health steps that you could be taking. Hi, Ginny. Thanks for coming on the show today.
Hello, and thanks for having me.
Tell us what makes you so passionate about helping people understand the steps they can take to be healthy.
Well, Tina, it's because I had to hear those words that nobody wants to hear. You have cancer. And that sent me on a mission to discover why I got an aggressive and deadly cancer that I had none of the risk factors nor the genetics for. And it sent me on a mission to discover how the body works, what I could use, how I could help my doctor to beat my cancer, only to find that there were many things that I could do to make my prognosis better. And those same things are things we can all do every day because it's all about building the immune system and keeping it armed and ready for battle.
So what is one of the first things that you learned about how to prevent health issues?
One of the things I learned is that our body was created with a built-in capacity to heal. It's just the way God, in His wisdom, created it. However, we're not doing the right things. Instead of doing things to promote the healing in our body, we are oftentimes hindering it or suppressing it.
What are some of the things that we might be doing that would hinder or suppress our immune systems?
Let's look at this. 60, 70%, maybe even 80% of our immune system, according to doctors, they now know, is in our gut lining that goes from our mouth and all the way out. If we keep that gut lining healthy and thriving as God created it to be, when a germ comes in and goes down into our stomach, our own gut will attack it and take care of it. However, we tend to eat foods and do things that irritate the gut. We use a lot of medications, antibiotics, of course, me, the queen here, chemotherapy for a year. All these things destroy that gut lining. You can't have a healthy immune system unless you keep that gut lining thriving. So if you take an antibiotic, you only take it when necessary, and that's okay. It can save your life. It saved my sister's life from spinal meningitis. But knowing that you took an antibiotic, you've got to rebuild that gut with probiotic foods and by what you do. So it's okay to take some of these things when we need it because it can save our life, but we must realize it's been destroyed and we've got to rebuild it. And after a year of chemotherapy, I protected my gut as much as I could. But after that year was up, I went on an all-out crusade to build that gut lining so it would be healthy again.
So what are some of the things that we need to do besides just taking a probiotic pill to rebuild our gut so that we can be healthy from the inside out?
It's important that you realize what things damage the gut. When you look at soft drinks, processed foods, foods that irritate the gut like gluten, gluten can irritate the gut for many people, not just those that are gluten sensitive. And a lot of chemicals with a lot of foods are irritating the gut. And then some people have their own gut issues with certain foods that may even be healthy foods, but they cause a reaction in their own body. So that's why it's important to know what creates a reaction in your own body. So there are foods that irritate the gut, and then there are foods besides taking a probiotic that build the gut. And these would be like your yogurt, your fermented foods. And what Dr. Jordan Rubin says, who's become an expert on this, is that we really need to be eating about 3 probiotic foods a day. And through my smoothie, I get 2 in my smoothie. The yogurt, and then I get sauerkraut that I buy in a big jar, and then I put a few tablespoons in every time I make a smoothie. So that's 2 probiotic foods that I'm getting just in that one smoothie. And when you do that on a regular basis, then I'll be honest with you, after chemotherapy, they told me it would be 2 to 5 years before I would get my immune system back and working, and some people it doesn't come back. But mine was back in 6 weeks. And that is a miracle, but it was what I was doing to enhance what God's already created.
So taking the right foods in that have probiotic characteristics to them, and possibly even a supplement if necessary, can
yes,
help.
I do recommend a supplement, a good probiotic supplement with many strains and many, many billions.
Okay. Can you take too many probiotics?
You know, I don't know that because all these things cost. I generally recommend 1 a day with the probiotic foods. And then you also need prebiotic fiber that bacteria can feed off of. So fruits and vegetables and nuts and seeds. And that's why a diet rich, what I call the Mediterranean diet, is one of the healthiest diets because of all the prebiotic fiber that feeds this gut bacteria.
So a Mediterranean diet and probiotic foods. Are there some other steps that we need to take to stay healthy?
Oh, yes. That's just the gut. One of the tough things I learned in the cancer journey, I told you I had an aggressive cancer. It was breast cancer. And when the doctor sat down with me in Chicago, they said, these are the risk factors for your cancer. We need to figure out which risk factors you have because you don't want to repeat this, because once we get rid of it, you don't want it coming back. Well, I'm like, yes, amen. So they go through them. I don't have a one of them, not even one of the risk factors did I have. And so my doctor said, well, we need to do extensive genetic testing. My mother had died from breast cancer 4 months before I was diagnosed. She was in her 80s, so that usually doesn't count unless it's earlier as a risk factor for genetics, but they did extensive genetic testing. Again, nothing showed up. So at that point, my doctor said, we don't know what to tell you caused your cancer. Usually we can give people some indication of things they need to change, but in your case, we can't. At that point, they gave up. I did not. No stone would be unturned because I was going to find out what caused my cancer. Because if I couldn't find out what caused it, then what was I going to do to prevent it from coming back? So I kept on searching. I kept on researching. I finally got some integrative medical doctors to do some tests, and they tested heavy metals in my body, and they tested toxic chemicals in my body. And bingo. The toxic metals, aluminum, mercury, lead, and then the toxic chemicals, there were a lot of endocrine disrupting chemicals called xenoestrogens found at super high levels in my body, including glyphosate and the Agent Orange pesticides that are used on our foods. So when I brought the results back to the cancer center, my doctor said, we didn't know this could accumulate in the body. I said, I didn't either. And they said, this is clearly a major reason, not the only reason. Cancer is usually multifactorial. But this is clearly a main reason for your cancer because these are hormone disruptors and you got a hormone-driven cancer. So it was high toxic chemicals in my body mimicking estrogen that drove my cancer.
So glyphosate is on the foods that we eat. How were you exposed to the other toxic chemicals?
Well, it can come several ways. It can come on your skin. Again, this was just an eye-opening thing that I had to learn from the School of Hard Knocks. I used to think if I put a poison or toxin on my skin, like if I wash it off, I'm okay. No, your skin is like a sponge. And 60, maybe 70% of what touches your skin gets into the capillaries below and circulates throughout your body. Now, let me prove that to you. I had a doctor bring me to the front of the class, and he made me stomp in my bare feet on a clove of garlic. And within 30 seconds, that garlic smell was coming out of my mouth.
Wow.
It went through my skin. So once I realized that, I'm going and reading labels in my beauty cabinet and in my kitchen, and I'm reading all these things that I'm putting on my skin or eating through foods. And I'm like, whoa, Nellie, look at all these chemicals. I can't even pronounce them. And so I look them up. And again, a lot of them were endocrine disruptors. But whether they were an endocrine disruptor or not, they were distracting my immune system from doing what God created it to do, because my bucket was just filled with chemicals. And when your body was made by God to be able to handle some of these things, because we have 5 filtering systems and our skin is our largest detox organ. But when you have so many chemicals, it gets to the point that your whole system gets clogged and it cannot filter as God intended, and then the immune system suffers as a result.
So what would you say to people who are interested in discovering whether or not they might be putting those chemicals into their bodies?
Well, what you have to do is learn to read labels. And I have 3 chapters in my book on reducing your toxic load. Knowing what to look for, reading labels. I even have a whole chart that shows you a toxic day, that what one woman would come in contact with possibly in just one day from the time she wakes up to the time she goes to sleep, either through your skin, through breathing, through what we eat, and then I'll list the toxic chemical, and by the end of the day, you're going, I get the picture here. We are all exposed to a lot of toxins. I say that, but I must also say this. After I got tested, we had my husband tested because he's a cancer survivor, and we didn't know this when he had cancer. But we're 2 pigs eating out of the same trough in the same pig pen, and the chemicals in my body that were sky high were not in his body. And that's just a genetic tendency for what his body can detox and what my body can detox. He did not have any in the red level. He had a few in the yellow, and the rest were in the green zone, which is safe, kind of like a stoplight, But here I had all these high chemicals. So one woman might, and another one might not. But I will say this. We've got to start using cosmetics and things on our skin that don't contain parabens and phthalates and these chemicals. If you just take coconut oil and you start using that for your moisturizer for your body, you've just eliminated a bunch of chemicals, because there's no chemicals in coconut oil. So I have a jar in my kitchen. I cook with it. I have a jar in my bathroom. I use it to moisturize my skin, especially at night, and just an overall moisturizer, because I used to use things that were filled with all these chemicals. So it's important that we all look at the deodorants and the personal care products. Men use 5 to 7 personal care products a day. Women use about 12. Well, I looked at my 12 and they were all filled with chemicals I could not pronounce. That's not a good sign. So the more we can get our chemical load down, the better our immune system will function as God intended. And it's not that we can stop ourselves from being exposed to all chemicals. We live in a toxic world. We live in an estrogenic toxic world. And so what we have to do is learn to lessen our load and let our body handle the rest.
Are there any other steps that we need to take to improve our health that we could be doing besides just limiting what goes in and making sure that we're taking probiotic foods and supplements?
Well, we've got to realize that there are certain foods that prevent cancer and disease, and there are certain foods that feed cancer and disease. And there are fruits and vegetables that are made by God, and He tells us in the Bible they're made for our healing. All these plant-based herbs and fruits and vegetables and nuts and seeds, if you look at the chemical plant profile, nutritionists now know what healing mechanisms fruits and vegetables have in them. So when you eat the whole fruit and vegetable, and it helps if you eat it clean, meaning it hasn't been grown with a bunch of pesticides, then you're like giving medicine to your body just to prevent cancer and diseases to begin with. Because blueberries are, they help to build your immune system. They're also anti-cancer. So if you're trying to fight COVID-19 and you eat a cup of blueberries every day, you're upping your immune system. Cruciferous vegetables, and this has been known by the American Cancer Society for quite some time, they contain sulforaphane, and that helps to lower estrogens in the body as well as it's anti-cancer. So eating cruciferous vegetables, and this is why, Tina, I make this banana chocolate smoothie every day, and the recipe's in the book, with blueberries, and it has all these cruciferous vegetables and greens and all these things that are superfoods that build the immune system. And as I told you, since getting off chemotherapy, I was told it's going to be a rough 2 to 5 years. Your immune system, you're going to catch everything. All these things are going to happen. I haven't caught one thing. And my doctors will tell you that I underwent the worst chemotherapy for the longest amount of time known to mankind. And some doctors said they've never seen anything like the way I went through it. And I give the credit to the way God created the body, because I was using that to enhance what He did rather than suppressing what God has created to keep us well.
Give us some examples of your favorite cruciferous vegetables and anti-cancer and health-boosting types of foods and vegetables.
Well, I use an avocado in my smoothie every day. And an avocado is a healthy food, and sometimes they go bad on you. That's okay. You can freeze it. If it's starting to go bad, go ahead and freeze it and then use it later on. Things like broccoli sprouts. Now, I'm going to be honest with you, Tina. I do not like the taste of broccoli sprouts. I think of hippies when I think of broccoli sprouts. But they are filled with that ingredient in the cruciferous vegetables that fights cancer and builds your immune system. And they say just a little small handful of sprouts is like eating a whole bowl of broccoli. Well, broccoli and cauliflower are cruciferous vegetables. But I put sprouts in my smoothie every day. I don't like to eat them, but the banana and the chocolate hides the taste. It's all a matter of hiding some things that maybe you don't like as much. And you remember George Bush, who has passed on, the older one who was first president. He talked about how he didn't like broccoli. Well, then hide it. That's what I say. I've made this banana chocolate smoothie for doctors going through cancer, and I don't tell them what's in it until they taste it and say, I like it. And then I tell them what's in it, and they go, you've got to be kidding. I sometimes hide spirulina in there. That's a superfood that builds your immune system. So I'm doing all these things that God has given us in nature. I am making use of that. I have my own herb garden on my back porch. I would have never done this before cancer. And I grow my herbs without chemicals, and I snip them and put them in things, and it's fresh herbs. And when they're fresh, they are powerful immune builders and cancer fighters.
That's great advice. I love that you're able to hide it under the chocolate. We are all happy about that.
Yes.
For those of us who don't like things like sauerkraut, that's good news. So
Yes.
What are any other tips that you have that you want to share with us today about how to stay healthy?
I think it's important today with the rates of people getting cancer. I didn't know this until I got cancer. 1 in 3 women and 1 in 2 men are getting cancer in this day and age. And it's not just one cancer. Sometimes it's several. I'm working with several patients. This is the 3rd or 2nd time they have had cancer. And your chances of having a house fire are 1 in 3,000, but we all have a plan in case we have a house fire. We have insurance, we have an escape plan. We do all these things. But in the area of cancer and disease, we've really got to put a plan in place, because today's generation born today, it's 1 in 2, and the rates are only going up. What was 1 in 40 or 30 in 1930s is now 1 in 2. That's too many. So if you're a mother or a dad, I have a lot of young couples that come to me and go, we don't have cancer, we just don't want to get it. And I go, good for you. So a cancer prevention plan means that you start with a primary doctor who sees you for all of your major things and refers you out for the rest. But the point is, he knows your family history. He knows your risk factors. He knows your history better than anyone, and he will order for you screenings for cancer and different things based on your age and your family history. But that is not going to stop you from getting disease. It's going to catch it early. Important. But I want you to go beyond that, because when you implement lifestyle changes, that's when you're preventing disease from happening in the first place. You can actually prevent cancer. Even the American Cancer Society says, 60, 70% of cancer today is caused from our lifestyle. MD Anderson will tell you the same thing. The research is absolutely clear. Most of the chronic diseases we are facing today in America are lifestyle caused. So we've got to look at the basic things in life that we need to do to enhance our immune system instead of suppressing it. And in my book, I give 8 clear steps. I relate it to cancer, but it can be used to fight any disease and to boost your immune system, so that if you're out with your mask on or your glove in the grocery store and a germ from COVID-19 happens to get into your mouth or on your face and gets into your nostrils, your own body will have a great ability to take care of it itself.
So can you give us the headlines of what those 8 steps would be? Just the basic main points of those.
It's a little bit hard to do in the time that we have. Let me take one, and you'll see how powerful one step is and what that can do for your body. Exercise helps every organ system in your body, including your immune system, to function better. Your lymphatic system is part of your immune system. It takes out the trash, and it's what keeps you well, okay? And so that lymphatic system is only going to work. All of our organs work without us thinking about it. But that lymphatic system only works when we actually move during the day. So in the cancer journey, here I am after 100 stitches and my first surgery, and I have more tubes and medical apparatus attached to my body than I know what to do with. And the nurse comes in and I said, look, what's it going to take for me to get rid of this catheter? And he says, if you can walk 4 rounds of the hospital floor, by 6 o'clock tomorrow morning, I will remove it. I said, you're on, be back at 6 a.m. I was more than ready to go, and I walked 4 rounds around the hospital floor. It felt so good. I said, how many to a mile? Now, please understand, Tina, that I am pole walking. I am pulling a pole with 3 rollers on it and all this medical apparatus behind me. So I'm not pole dancing, I'm pole walking. And I made it to a mile. And then it just felt so good. I said, I think I'm going to go for another mile. And the nurse said, wait, let me call the doctor. So while I'm walking, he calls my doctor, my surgeon, and she says, you let her go if she's got the energy and the balance. After surgery, it's only going to promote healing. Well, when my surgeon came in after I made it to 2 miles, she goes, Ginny, you're supposed to go home tomorrow. You've got your catheter out. She said, these tubes that you were supposed to have at home for 2 weeks that your husband was supposed to nurse so you wouldn't get an infection, we're pulling them today. Your body has taken care of all of it. My body pumped that lymphatic system, got all those fluids out, reduced my risk of blood clots, which are high after surgery, especially as you get older. There was like 10 different things that did for me, and I actually walked back 2 miles back to my hotel after they checked me out of the hospital. And that's what I did before and after every chemo. And that's what I've done for 5 years, is I've taken the hormone pill that blocks estrogen and makes your bone density go down. Exercise is helping me to compensate by building it back. It helps every organ system in your body. And then when I finish the cancer journey and I finish all these treatments, my doctor says, Ginny, you remember all that exercise you did and how it benefited you? She said, look at the research that just came out of Australia. It shows that exercise is the best thing a cancer patient can do to get themselves through the treatments and come out with a better prognosis. If exercise were a pill, it should be given to every cancer patient during every phase of treatment. But what does that mean for the average person? It means exercise helps you to prevent disease, period. Your body thrives when you move. Your lymphatic system cleans out your brain, all the lymph nodes, all the parts of your body, but only if you move. When you become sedentary, the toxins start to accumulate. It's important that we move every single day.
That is such great information. You've brought so many wonderful insights. Are there any last parting tips that you want to leave with the audience as they're seeking to secure a better life of health?
Sure. Let me talk about the importance of deep sleep. It's hard for some people to get sleep, but we've got to figure out, and my book has a whole chapter on sleep, and if you're having sleep problems, what to do, because it's a problem for cancer patients because of all the chemicals and chemo. It kind of wakens you up and it's hard to sleep. But sleep is, when we're doing this interview, our body is performing miracles while you and I are talking. But when we go to sleep, those miracles only intensify, because deep sleep is when melatonin is released in our body, and it is a major cancer fighter and disease fighter. It's what keeps the immune system strong. So it's important that we get that deep sleep, and if something is keeping us from getting that sleep, then we need to come up with a plan and do something about it, because your major cancer fighter is deep sleep. And my doctors clearly told me during this cancer journey, if you cannot get deep sleep, you will not be able to recover from the chemotherapy and all the things we're going to do to your body. I had to make sleep a priority. And we should all do that for our children, okay? In other words, if your children are going to go back to school in the fall. I spent 32 years in the public education system, and every teacher knows this. The child who doesn't get sleep is the one most likely to get sick when something travels through the classroom. If that child is sleepy and can't pay attention, of course they can't pay attention too, but sleep is the remedy for so many things. So when we go back to school in the fall, make sure your child has adequate sleep.
You have brought us such a wealth of critical information here today, Ginny. I really appreciate you. And I know that people listening are going to be so fascinated by your book and by the additional resources that you have to provide. How can people stay connected with you and follow you and find your amazing resources?
I have a cancer prevention and health prevention blog, and it's at www.Ginny, G-I-N-N-Y, Brant, B as in boy, RANT.com. My book is also there, and you can even look back on the cancer blog to when I started it a year and a half ago and look for certain topics like living in an estrogenic world. I just did 5 cancer blog post connected on bone density, how to build bone density naturally. And I just got my health results back, and I was able to reverse what the cancer treatments and estrogen blocking pills has done to my bone density through the different things that I researched and did. But that cancer prevention blog can be very helpful. And the book is written with a well-respected oncologist who is also a major medical researcher and on the cutting edge of cancer. And he clearly says that cancer, beating cancer, is more than chemo, radiation, and surgery. We need to pull out every tool that we can, nutrition, lifestyle changes, and he totally agrees with me. So he is on the cover with me because he makes commentary throughout the book.
Thank you so much for coming on Flourish-Meant today, Ginny. This has been incredibly insightful and so much more that we have to learn about this. So I hope that all of you will turn to Ginny's book and her resources, as well as coming back to visit us again for the next episode of Flourish.